How far can one playful joke about your husband's body go before it costs you your home and your child? What happens when the man everyone calls weak stops arguing and lets a lawyer speak for him in public? Can someone who swears it was just a joke survive when the consequences are written in black and white? My name is Tamsin Vine, and people always said I was the funny one. They said I had no filter, that I told the truth other women kept inside, and I took that as a compliment. I liked making a room stop and then burst out laughing. I liked feeling all eyes turned to me. At home, it was not so different. My husband, Elliot, was quiet and careful, and I always said someone had to bring life into the house. I thought that meant it had to be me. That evening started in our small apartment kitchen. I stood at the counter doing my makeup in the reflection of the microwave door. The light was bad, but I knew how to angle my face. Mira sat at the table with her crayons, humming to herself. Elliot was at the stove, moving pasta around in the pot like it was a science project. Our two mugs sat on opposite sides of the counter, like we had assigned corners. Mine still had a red lipstick mark from the morning. His was plain and clean and already rinsed. He asked what time I would be back from the rooftop bar. I said I did not know and that it depended on how boring he decided to be about it later. He reminded me that we had Mira, and that she woke up early. I told him that one fun night would not kill anyone, and that he should be happy his wife still got invited places. He went quiet like he always did when I said something sharp. I told myself he was too sensitive and that somebody had to shake him. His phone buzzed on the counter while he drained the pasta. I glanced over and saw a small calendar box on the screen before it went dark. It had a title, something like Harbourfront 2:20 p.m. I did not read the full thing. I just thought it was some boring meeting. He tapped the screen and the alert disappeared. I joked that it was probably a secret lover. He said it was nothing important and went back to the pasta. I did not care enough to ask more. In our bedroom, I pulled on my jumpsuit, the tight black one that made my hips stand out. I took selfies and sent them to my friend Nia, who worked with me. I told her I needed a real man to match this outfit. She sent back laughing faces and fire emojis. I smiled at myself in the mirror and turned one way, then the other. Elliot came in and said I looked nice, but his voice was flat. I told him he should be grateful I still looked like this after having his child. I said most men would be proud to show me off. He just nodded and checked his watch. When I left the apartment, the air in the hallway felt cooler than inside. Elliot stayed back with Mira, who waved her coloured fingers at me. He said they would watch a movie and that I should text if I would be late. I told him he worried too much and that this was why I needed nights out. The elevator doors closed on his serious face, and I rolled my eyes at my reflection. The rooftop bar was almost full when I arrived. Fairy lights hung over the railings, and the city looked soft and far away under the dark sky. Music thumped just loud enough that people leaned close to talk. That was my favourite kind of place. Our friends were already gathered at a tall table with drinks lined up. I saw Callum there, Elliot's old friend from their football days. He stood straight and relaxed, a little sun on his skin from working as a trainer. He grinned when he saw me and opened his arms in a mock welcome. Everyone asked where Elliot was. I said he wanted to stay home and rest because he got tired so easily. I said he was an old man at heart, and that made them laugh. Someone asked if we were trying for baby number 2 yet. I smiled wide and said it was hard to build a family when your husband did not have the right equipment. They howled at that, leaning on each other, and I felt power rise inside me. I told myself it was just a joke. I said if he really had a problem, he would have told me. The night moved in a blur of drinks and small videos. Rowan held up his phone more than once, filming short clips of us clinking glasses. I knew I looked good on camera and played to it. I leaned closer to Callum and told the group that at least he was tall enough to give me a decent gene pool. Someone shouted that Elliot would be jealous. I said there was no point being jealous when you were small and could not do much. They laughed even louder. Callum looked away for a second, then smiled again, but it had a nervous edge. Later in the evening, after another round of shots appeared, someone called for a toast. The music dipped for a moment, and the whole group turned toward me. They told me to say something wild. I raised my glass and felt the warmth in my chest. I told them that if Elliot could not give me another baby, maybe Callum would have to help me get pregnant. I saw a few jaws drop. Then there was this roar of laughter, loud and sharp. Some clapped the table, some whistled. Callum laughed with them, looking half proud and half shocked. I felt like the star of the show. For a moment, through the noise, I saw Elliot's face in my head, the careful way he folded dish towels and lined up mail. I pushed the image away. I told myself that if he ever heard this, he would know I was joking. I said in my mind that if he felt hurt, it meant he was insecure, not that I was cruel. That thought made me feel safe again. I leaned into the attention, smiled for another photo, and told myself that respect followed results. And I had results. Everyone was laughing. That had to mean I was right. Hours later, when I got home, the apartment was quiet and dim. Mira's shoes were by the door, neatly lined up. Elliot was in the bedroom, the light under the door a thin line. In the kitchen, his mug sat clean on one side of the counter. My wine glass from last night was still on the other side, with a faint ring on the surface. His phone lay near the sink, screen dark. I tossed my bag down and went to wash off my makeup. When I came back, the bedroom door was almost closed. I pushed it, but he said he was tired and needed sleep. His voice sounded calm, not angry. That bothered me more than if he had shouted. I told myself he was sulking, that he would get over it, that it was nothing. As I turned away, his phone buzzed again on the counter, the screen lighting up in the dark kitchen. The bedroom door latch clicked shut, just as Elliot's phone lit up on the counter, with a new reminder titled Old Harbour Office, 3:35 p.m. The next morning at the office, I felt slightly heavy but still proud of myself. I walked through the open-plan floor with my coffee, and I could feel eyes on me. At first, I thought it was just my outfit, but then I saw it on a screen. One of my co-workers had the rooftop video open. I heard him say that my joke was savage, and the others laughed. I smiled and leaned closer like it was no big deal. He asked if my husband was cool with that kind of humour, and I told him that Elliot knew who he married. I said Elliot always told me to be myself, and this was me. I added that we were just playing around, and that strong couples could handle jokes. Inside, I felt a small twist because I knew he had not said any of that, but it sounded better this way. If I framed it as our shared style, then he was part of the joke too. More people gathered around the screen, and someone had added music and text to the clip. The words said something about a wife needing a real donor, and there was a laughing emoji. People slapped their desks and shook their heads. One of the girls said she could never say that about her own man. I told her that honesty was love, and if she was too scared to be real, that was her problem. She gave me a tight smile and went back to her work. At my own desk, I reopened my social apps and saw that the clip was now in our wider circle. Someone I barely talked to had shared it with a caption calling me ruthless. My sister Joelle had commented that I was a legend and that men needed to step up. That made me feel better. If other women cheered, then I was speaking for them. I told myself that weak men were always going to whine, but the world listened to women like me. As I scrolled, a small notification from our shared family calendar slid across my screen. It said there was a meeting marked as personal, downtown, at 11:10 a.m. It was linked to Elliot's account. I thought it was maybe a dentist or some boring tech chat. I clicked it, but there were no notes. Just that title and the time. I shrugged, dismissed it, and opened a new tab for work. Around mid-morning, my manager Sam walked past my desk. He glanced at my screen, then at my face. He asked if that video of me from the rooftop was real. I said it was just us messing around and that our marriage was strong enough to survive some jokes. He rubbed his forehead and said that personal things could sometimes spill into work in ways that were not good. I told him not to worry because Elliot knew I was a content girl and that it was part of my personality. I made it sound like Elliot had agreed to be a character in my life story. After lunch, I went to the gym to meet Callum. He had offered a free training session, and I liked the idea of being alone with him in his space. On the weight floor, he showed me how to hold the bar and where to stand. He said people at the bar were still talking about my joke. I laughed and asked what they were saying. He answered that some thought I was brave, and some thought it was harsh. I told him that men who were not sure about themselves always called women cruel. I added that if Elliot could not take a little fun, maybe I needed someone stronger. He went quiet for a second while I held a plank. Then he asked if Elliot was upset at him. I told him that Elliot knew it was all talk. I also said that if Elliot had a problem, he needed to say it to my face instead of sulking. That way, I made it sound like any tension was Elliot's fault, not ours. Callum just nodded and checked his watch. I saw one of his co-workers looking over with a strange expression, like he heard enough to guess what we were really doing. In the locker hall, after the session, I fixed my hair in the mirror. My heart beat a little faster when Callum stood close behind me, talking low. He said he did not want trouble between us and Elliot. I told him that trouble was already there, long before him. I said Elliot slept on his side of the bed, did his little routines, and rarely touched me, so he had no right to complain now. Saying it out loud made me feel justified, even if I knew it was not the full truth. On the way home, I stopped at the supermarket to grab groceries. Elliot met me there with Mira, because they had been at the park. In the checkout line, Mira sat in the cart, swinging her legs. I put items on the belt in a rush. Elliot asked if I had fun at the gym. I told him it was nice to train with a real man for once, someone who understood my body. His face changed slightly, but he stayed calm. I saw the cashier's eyebrows lift, and I liked that. I wanted people to know I had options. I called Callum to ask about a protein brand, putting him on speaker. He answered and asked how my body felt after the workout. I said in a light tone that if he kept helping me this much, maybe he would be the one to get me pregnant next time. A man behind us chuckled under his breath. Elliot looked straight ahead and paid for the food. He did not try to take my phone or end the call. Later in the car, he said that maybe we did not need to involve his friend in every joke. I told him he was trying to control my mouth, and that was not going to happen. That night, after Mira went to bed, I came out of the bathroom and saw Elliot at the dining table with his laptop. He had a spreadsheet open. I could see rows of dates and short notes, but not the full words. When I stepped closer, he shifted the screen so I could not read it. I asked what he was doing. He said he was sorting some things and checking records. I snapped that he should spend that energy on our marriage. He just nodded and kept typing, his face blank. His phone lay next to the laptop. For a moment, a soft light came on, and a notification banner slid across. I caught only part of it. It looked like a message thread called Follow-up, with a small emoji as the contact name. Before I could ask, he picked up the phone and locked it. I told myself he was being dramatic just to get attention. I went to the couch and scrolled through my notifications. Another friend had tagged me in the rooftop video. The caption called me savage and fearless. Sam asked me to come into his office for a quick word just as our group chat pinged with a fresh tagged repost of the Help Me Get Pregnant clip. The buzz around the joke did not die after the supermarket. If anything, it grew stronger. By the time Elliot's birthday came, I felt like everyone had seen the clip, or at least heard about it. In the group chat, people said they could not wait to see what I would say next. Joelle told me I had to top myself at the dinner. She said everyone expected something wild. I told her I was not a clown, but the truth is, I liked the pressure. I liked knowing the room would be waiting for my lines. We booked a long table at a family restaurant near the river. It had fairy lights and fake plants and noisy families with kids. It was the kind of place where people shouted across the room and nobody cared. When we arrived, the server led us to a big table with balloons tied to the chairs. There were spots for Elliot's mother, my mother, friends, and, of course, Callum and Rowan. I thought it was funny that all the pieces of our life would sit side by side like that. Elliot pulled out my chair and I sat down in the middle where I could see everyone. He took a place near the end, close to his mother, Margaret. She gave me a polite smile, but her eyes looked tired. My mother, Verena, arrived in a bright dress and kissed my cheeks, telling me I looked like I owned the place. Margaret and Verena greeted each other with stiff politeness. I could feel the line between them like a crack in the floor. Soon drinks appeared and people started talking. Someone asked if we were working on baby number 2 yet. Joelle looked at me with a grin, like she was handing me the ball. I said that I was ready, but that some things were out of my hands when the man was not very strong in certain areas. There were giggles and a few gasps. Margaret's hand tightened around her glass. Elliot stared at his napkin. Callum shifted in his seat. Rowan sat opposite me with his phone face down on the table. He said he hoped I would give him some new material that night. I told him that I was always good for content. Elliot's jaw moved a little, like he was grinding his teeth, but he said nothing. The silence from him almost annoyed me more than if he had argued. I told myself he could stop this any time if he would only loosen up and play along. In my head, this whole thing was still his fault. The server came back with plates and asked who the birthday boy was. I pointed to Elliot and told the server he was shy because he was small everywhere, not just in age difference. The server gave an awkward laugh and looked at Elliot, who just nodded. People at the next table glanced over. I noticed and felt a rush, like I had expanded my audience. I think now that was the moment it stopped being about us and started being a show. After the main courses, they dimmed the lights for dessert. A small cake with candles came out, and the group began to clap. Rowan picked up his phone and opened the camera. He told everyone he needed a birthday speech from me. People tapped their glasses and chanted for a toast. I stood up with my drink. The phone cameras faced me like little eyes. I still see that row of screens when I close my own eyes now. I spoke about how long Elliot and I had been together and how we had built a life. Then I said that our little family wanted to grow, but that it was hard when the man did not have the right size tools for the job. I added that if things did not improve, maybe his friend Callum would have to help me get pregnant, since he clearly had better genes to share. There were shouts and some nervous laughter. A few people covered their faces. Joelle howled. Callum laughed too, but his ears were red. Rowan kept recording. I saw Elliot's face at the edge of my vision. It looked pale and his mouth was a thin line. For a second, guilt touched me, but I pushed it away. I told myself he could speak up if he hated it so much. I told myself that if he chose to stay silent, that was on him. I blew him a playful kiss in front of everyone, and the crowd noise rushed back over the moment. After the cake, Elliot said he had to take a call. He did not even look angry, just distant. He left the table and walked toward the hallway near the bathrooms. Margaret watched him go, worry in her eyes. I rolled mine and told Joelle he was being dramatic on his own birthday. She agreed and said some men loved to play the victim. A few minutes later, I went to touch up my lipstick and passed the hallway. I heard Elliot's voice, low and calm. He was on the phone with someone speaking about dates and posts and things that had happened in front of witnesses. He mentioned protecting Mira from online mess. His tone was so steady that it unnerved me. When he saw me, he ended the call and said it was just a work thing. I told him he was weird for talking about work on his birthday and went back to the table. When I sat down, Margaret leaned toward me. She asked me very quietly why I spoke about her son like that in public. I told her it was just our humour and that Elliot knew I was the honest type. She said she had never seen him look so humiliated. I replied that maybe he should learn to satisfy his wife, then he would not have to worry about jokes. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked away. For a moment I felt a strange heat in my chest, but I told myself she was just old-fashioned. Later that night, after we got home, my mother called from her volunteer shift at the hospital. She was on a break in the cafeteria and had heard from Joelle about the speech. She said she was proud of me for not shrinking. She said weak men always cried when strong women spoke the truth. I let her words wash over me like a warm bath. I told her Elliot's family could not handle a modern wife. She agreed and told me not to apologize. When I hung up, I scrolled through my notifications. Rowan had already sent me the video of the toast. There I was, standing tall with my glass, the whole table in the frame, Elliot frozen at the side. People were already commenting, calling it brutal and iconic. I hit save without thinking. I still thought I could control the story. As the table started chanting for a second toast, Rowan raised his phone to record again while Elliot stepped back into the hallway to answer another muted call from a private number. The next weeks felt strange, like the air in our home had changed but the furniture stayed the same. Elliot was there, but not in the way he used to be. He moved around the apartment like a guest who did not want to disturb anyone. I told myself he was sulking and playing the victim. I said it was not my job to fix his mood. In my mind, I had done nothing but speak the truth in a funny way. One Saturday afternoon, we met at the park. It was supposed to be a family day, just the three of us. The sky was clear, and the playground was full of kids. Mira ran straight to the swings, and Elliot pushed her gently while I stood nearby, checking my phone. I saw that the birthday video was still getting likes. A few comments now were less friendly, saying I had gone too far. I told myself those people were jealous or bitter. I only focused on the supportive ones. Mira called out to me and told me to watch her go higher. I slipped my phone into my pocket and gave her a smile. She laughed and shouted that she wanted to fly, and Elliot told her in a calm tone that he would not let her fall. Then, out of nowhere, she turned her head toward a group of parents and said that Daddy was too small to make a baby, so Uncle Cal had to help. She said it clearly, like it was a normal line from a cartoon. The whole swing set seemed to go quiet. A few parents looked over with wide eyes. Elliot's hand froze on the swing chain. I felt heat climb up my neck. Then I laughed and told the group that kids repeat everything and that we were just a playful couple. I told Mira it was a silly grown-up joke, nothing more. Elliot knelt by the swing and told her gently that some things were not for children to say. I rolled my eyes and said he was putting shame into her head. On the way back to the car, he said that what she had repeated was not okay. I told him that if he had not acted so cold in our marriage, I would not have needed to tease him into life. I said he should ask why our daughter heard that instead of blaming me for everything. It sounded twisted even as I said it, but I pushed that feeling down. I told myself that if he felt attacked, it was because he knew he had failed me. Later that day, we drove to his mother's house. Margaret had invited us for dinner, saying she wanted some quiet time with Mira. The living room smelled like stew and clean laundry. Family photos lined the walls, and Elliot appeared as a child in many of them, always neat and serious. Mira went to play with some old toys, and Margaret asked us to sit. She looked tired, as if she had not slept well in days. She asked me why Mira knew those words. I said children picked up things from everywhere, and that we joked in our home. I said Elliot was just as much part of the humour as I was. Elliot did not agree or disagree. He just sat there, hands clasped, staring at the coffee table. Margaret said she had heard about the videos and the jokes from different people. She said she had never seen her son look so ashamed as he did at the restaurant. I answered that shame was his choice, not mine. When we went back to the apartment that evening, I noticed new things. On the small table near the hallway, there were 3 binders lined up. They had tidy labels on the spines: home, auto, bank. I flipped one open, expecting bills, but there were also neatly typed lists. Elliot walked past and said he was just organising paperwork so nothing got lost. I accused him of being dramatic and planning to walk out. He said he wanted everything in order, just in case. He did not raise his voice. That calm tone scratched at my nerves. In the kitchen, a sticky note was stuck to the edge of the fridge. It said, "Bring forms," in his neat handwriting. I ripped it off and tossed it toward the bin. I told him he was making our home feel like an office. He picked it up without comment and placed it on the corner of his laptop instead. The guest room started to look lived in. At first, he said he slept there when Mira climbed into our bed and kicked him all night. Then it simply became his room most of the time. His shirts hung over the back of the chair, and his watch sat on the nightstand. Mira's small pillow sometimes ended up on the bed too. She liked to fall asleep watching cartoons with him. I told myself he was trying to punish me by taking comfort away. I told Joel on the phone that he was emotionally abandoning me. One night, I stood on the balcony with a glass of wine while Joelle talked in my ear. I told her that Elliot's mother was turning him against me and that everyone cared more about his feelings than mine. She said I needed to show him what real loss looked like and that if he could not handle a few jokes, I should let him go. Through the sliding glass door, I could see Elliot at the dining table feeding pages into a small shredder. The soft hum went on, steady and calm. I watched him pick up the stack of old letters and cut them into strips. When I came back inside, I opened the hallway closet to grab a coat and noticed a small USB tape under a thick folder labeled Taxes. On its side, in small writing, was just a date. I laughed bitterly and told him he was acting like some spy. He said only that it was important to keep records safe. I said normal husbands bought flowers instead of hiding drives. He did not answer. Another evening, I took the trash down the hall and heard his voice coming from the stairwell landing. He was talking in a low tone, almost a whisper. He mentioned incidents, dates, and online posts, as if reading from a list. He said something about Mira hearing bad words and wanting to protect her from more. I stayed just out of sight, listening. My chest tightened, but I told myself he was probably just venting to a friend. When I stepped into view, he ended the call and said it was a work thing. I called him dramatic and said he liked to act like the tragic hero. That night, Mira fell asleep in the guest room again. Elliot tucked her in and stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. I told him that sleeping in there was confusing her and that he was turning our daughter against me. He said calmly that he was not saying anything bad about me to her, that he was only trying to give her peace. I claimed that his silence was worse than any words. I said he was showing her that I was not worth lying beside. He looked at me for a long moment, then turned back toward the hallway. His face did not show much, only a tired kind of distance. I heard the faint click of the drawer in his small desk as he locked it. Somewhere inside were the binders, the notes, the USB with the date. I told myself it was all a bluff. I told myself he would never really do anything, but the crack inside our life had widened. Even Mira could feel it. One morning when Margaret came over to take her to the park, Mira stood in the hallway holding her little backpack and looked from our bedroom to the guest room. Mira asked why Daddy slept in the guest room while Margaret stood in the apartment doorway, waiting to talk, her eyes fixed on me. When I look back, the day I actually crossed the line with Callum felt weirdly normal at first. I went to the office like any other morning, holding my coffee and pretending I did not see the side looks from some people. The video was still floating around. New comments appeared saying I was cruel, and I hated those more than any insult. I told myself they did not get our sense of humor. I told myself they were jealous that anyone cared enough to watch our life. Around 11, a message from Callum popped up on my screen. He asked if I wanted to meet somewhere quiet after my shift. He wrote that he was worried about the tension with Elliot. I stared at the text for a moment, then typed back that if Elliot had a problem, he could grow a backbone and say it. I added a smiley to make it look light. Underneath, something dark and hungry pushed me forward. I wanted to feel chosen and powerful again. At lunch, Sam stopped by my desk. He asked if everything at home was okay and hinted that he had seen some of my social posts. He said personal drama could affect work if it got messy. I told him not to worry and said I knew how to handle my own life. I made it sound like Elliot was overreacting and that the jokes were no big deal. When Sam walked away, a small Cloud Sync pop-up appeared in the corner of my screen. File uploaded successfully from our shared cloud. I guessed Elliot was just backing up photos and ignored it. In the late afternoon, I went to meet Callum near the gym. We walked to a cheap hotel bar down the street, just far enough that nobody from our usual spots would see us. We sat in a corner booth talking low. He said he felt bad about how my jokes had hit Elliot. I told him that Elliot had pulled away long before the jokes and that I was tired of being starved for attention. I told myself I was only explaining, but really I was building a case in my own defense. When I leaned in and he did too, the rest happened in a blur, and I will not describe it. It is enough to say that what had been a loud joke became a quiet betrayal. Afterward, walking back through the parking lot, I felt a strange mix of guilt and victory. I told myself that now, if Elliot left, it would be because he could not handle real life, not because I had done something unprovoked. I shaped the story in my head before he even knew the facts. That is what I was good at. That evening at home, I found him in the living room with his laptop again. The screen showed a clean desktop with only two big folders, named Archive A and Archive B. A spreadsheet was open, filled with initials and dates. I saw T and C repeated, and a few notes I could not read. When I stepped closer, he turned the screen slightly away. I asked what all that was. He said he was keeping track of things so he did not forget the truth later. His voice was steady. I snapped that normal husbands just talked. They did not make charts. I accused him of trying to trap me and called him obsessive. He did not shout back. Instead, he repeated some of my own words from different nights, almost perfectly. He mentioned the rooftop bar joke, the supermarket call on speaker, the restaurant toast, and a few other jabs I had already forgotten. Hearing them lined up like that made my stomach twist. I claimed he was twisting my jokes into attacks. I said he was crazy. Later, in our bedroom, I tried to start a fight about the guest room and how he avoided touching me. I told him if he had acted like a man, I would not have needed anyone else. He listened without interrupting. When I ran out of words, he said quietly that he knew about Callum. He said he knew about the afternoons and the messages, and that he had enough to understand the pattern. I waited for shouting, but it did not come. Instead, he said he would not argue anymore. He said he would handle it properly. The word felt cold and official, and I hated it. I tried to laugh it off and asked if he planned to cry to his mother or write some long, sad post. He shook his head and said he would speak to the right people and do things the right way. He did not raise his voice once. He left the room, and a moment later I heard his phone buzz on the nightstand. The screen lit up with the alarm name in clear letters. His phone alarm buzzed with the label paper drop, right after he said he would handle everything properly. At work, my phone rang from a private number, and a calm man said he was Elliot's lawyer and needed me to come to the lobby to receive some documents. I laughed and told him this was over a few jokes, but my legs still shook in the elevator. In the glass lobby, Elliot stood with a suited stranger who handed me a thick envelope while my co-workers watched. The petition said divorce and temporary orders, and it listed my videos and the affair, giving him the apartment and mirror for now. My throat closed around my favourite excuses. The process server pressed the envelope into my hand as Elliot turned away and the words temporary custody burned up at me from the first page.